If the Nephilim were real giants born from angels and humans, the Catholic Church had a very awkward problem. Can an angel get someone pregnant? And if that happened, what do you even do with their children? The internet loves one answer: shadowy giants, hidden bones, vaults under Rome, secret files at the Vatican. It is dramatic. It is cinematic. And it skips the quiet move the Church actually made. By the end of this video, you will see how 4 strange verses in Genesis turned into giant horror stories, how the Church slowly pulled those giants back down to earth, and why that choice still shapes every Nephilim theory you see online today. So let's start with the one thing everyone agrees on. The Bible really does mention the Nephilim, and it does it in the most frustrating way possible. Genesis 6, 4 verses. The text says, "The sons of God saw, the daughters of men were beautiful. They took them as wives," and then you get this line. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. These were the mighty men of old, men of renown. That is it. No origin story, no height chart, no scene where someone stands next to a doorway so we can scale them. Just a hint that something about this union was wrong, and that it helped push the world toward the flood. Later, in the book of Numbers, the Israelite spies go into the land and come back terrified. They say they saw the sons of Anak there, from the Nephilim. They say, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes," which might be accurate, or might be the world's oldest "please do not send us back in there" excuse. If you stop with just the Bible, you have a handful of clues. Sons of God, daughters of men, Nephilim, mighty men of old. It is enough to haunt you, not enough to satisfy you. Ancient readers felt that same itch. Who are these sons of God? Angels? Spiritual beings? Royal rulers? And what exactly are the Nephilim? Giants? Fallen ones? Famous warriors? The text throws a mystery on the table, then walks away. That silence does not stay empty for long. In the centuries before Jesus, Jewish writers start filling the gap with stories. Books like First Enoch, popular in some circles, take that tiny line in Genesis and blow it up into a cosmic disaster. In First Enoch, a group of heavenly beings called Watchers look down from their post and desire human women. They meet on a mountain. They swear an oath so no one can back out. Then they descend, take wives, and have children. Those children are enormous and violent. They devour crops, then animals, then, in some versions, humans. The world does not just get evil, it gets evil with teeth. The Watchers also teach forbidden knowledge. One shows humans how to forge weapons. Another teaches cosmetics and seductive tricks. Others reveal astrology and occult practices. Violence spreads. Corruption spreads. The line between heaven and earth blurs in all the worst ways. In Enoch's story, the earth itself cries out. The righteous beg for help. God responds by sending archangels with orders. Warn Noah about the flood. Chain the rebel angels in darkness. Destroy their giant sons. The Nephilim die. Their spirits become wandering, harmful beings that keep troubling humanity. If you like cosmic horror, this is your book. It takes 4 cryptic verses and turns them into a full universe of fallen angels, hybrid giants, and a god who has to act like a cosmic surgeon, cutting out infected tissue before it kills the patient. If you ask a lot of modern Nephilim fans, this is the real version. Genesis is the trailer. Enoch is the full movie. But if you open a Catholic Bible, you will not find First Enoch there. And that is the first way the Church tamed the giants. Not with shovels, with a table of contents. Early Christians knew Enoch. Some liked it. The New Testament letter of Jude quotes a prophecy that clearly sounds like the Enoch tradition, about angels kept in chains until judgment. Some Christian writers in the first centuries treat the story of the Watchers with respect and think it really happened. But when bishops slowly worked out which books would count as scripture for the Church, Enoch did not make the final list in the West. It stayed in the background. You could read it. You could learn from it. You could not use it the same way you use Genesis or the Gospels to build doctrine. That choice did something subtle but huge. When the church sat down to explain the Nephilim, it was not forced to accept the full angel plus human equals giant baby storyline. Genesis was canon. Enoch became context, not law. Even then, the church still had to answer the basic question: who are these sons of God? And what are the Nephilim? Humans with scary reputations, or something stranger? Early Christian writers did not all agree. Some, like certain second-century authors, leaned close to the Enoch view. They thought spiritual beings had crossed a line, taken some kind of bodily form, and fathered violent offspring. For them, the Nephilim were part of a larger spiritual war. You can still feel that pull in some early commentaries. But over time, another line of reading started winning, especially in the Latin West. It reaches its clearest form in the work of Augustine of Hippo in the early 5th century. Augustine looks at Genesis 6 and basically says, this is bad, but it is human bad. For Augustine, the sons of God are men from the line of Seth, the family that tried to stay faithful to God. The daughters of men are women from the line of Cain, associated with rebellion and violence. The sin is not angels sneaking into bedrooms. It is faithful families and unfaithful families mixing marriage, power, and attraction without caring about shared faith or virtue. The Nephilim, in this view, are fallen ones, in a moral sense. Think ruthless warlords, men who dominate by brute strength and fear. They are big in power, not necessarily in height. Augustine has two big reasons for pushing the story this way. First, his view of angels. For him, angels are pure spirits. They do not have normal physical bodies. They can appear, they can act, they can influence. But literal reproduction would mean they have reproductive organs and DNA, which does not fit his picture of spiritual beings. Second, he already spent a lot of energy fighting pagan myths, where gods constantly sleep with humans and make demigods. Stories of Zeus visiting women in disguise and making heroic children are exactly what he does not want to echo. He wants a hard border between the one true God and all created beings. No other gods sharing that space. No hybrid offspring walking around. Later Catholic thinkers follow his lead. Thomas Aquinas, writing in the 13th century, repeats the same pattern. Angels can tempt. They can interact with the physical world. They can even produce illusions that make people think something happened. But they do not literally father children with humans. Step by step, that becomes the default Catholic reading in the West. Genesis 6 is about human sin and collapsing moral boundaries. The Nephilim become a picture of what happens when people who should know better let power, beauty, and violence guide their choices. You can see what just happened. The church did not delete the word Nephilim. It did not remove Genesis 6. It did something gentler and more effective. It taught you what to imagine when you hear that word. Not a secret race of angelic hybrids whose bloodline might still be here, but human beings who fell very far, very hard. Before we go on, let me pause here for 1 second. If you like this kind of slow, source-based untangling of internet myths, where we actually read the awkward parts and follow them through history, you can subscribe so you do not miss the next one. It tells YouTube this is the kind of deep dive you want more of, and it helps me keep making them. Alright, back to the giants. Giants did not disappear from Christian imagination. Far from it. Open a medieval map, and you will still see giant figures drawn on the edges of the world. Read medieval stories, and you will still find saints and kings fighting huge enemies. But even there, something has shifted. The giants on those maps are not treated as a separate, secret species with angel DNA. They are more like a symbol of the wild and the unknown. A way of saying, beyond here, things are not safe. The giant enemies in stories often stand in for human vices: pride, cruelty, appetite that never stops. The same thing happens with angels and demons. Catholic teaching sets fences. Angels are created spirits. They serve God. Demons are fallen angels. They can tempt minds, disturb bodies, and cause trouble if God allows it. They can possess. They can deceive. They can wound. What they do not do, in official teaching, is create new kinds of beings through sex. If someone claimed, "This child is literally half demon," the Catholic answer would be simple. No. That is either a lie, a misunderstanding, or a legend built around a normal human birth. The devil can ruin your life in many ways. Biologically fathering a new species is not on his list. By the time you reach the early modern period, another force joins the conversation: natural science. As people start studying fossils and bones more carefully, a lot of giant skeletons turn out to be big but normal humans, or misread animal bones. Height becomes a medical and genetic question. Diseases like gigantism get names and descriptions. Explorers bring back new data on how tall people can get in different parts of the world. The Nephilim story does not vanish. Preachers still talk about a world so corrupt that only a flood could reset it. They still mention mighty men and growing violence. But the focus turns more toward human society sliding downhill, and less toward a hidden supernatural breeding program. So when a modern video says, "The church covered up the Nephilim," here is the strange part. You do not need a secret vault to see what happened. It is visible in books, sermons, and commentaries. Whenever the story leaned toward rival gods and hybrid demigods, Catholic thinkers pulled it back toward one God and fully human sinners. Whenever legends tried to turn giants into a separate race that might still rule the world in secret, official teaching turned giants into a warning about what humans can become when they stop listening. You can decide how you feel about that. If you love the cosmic horror version, the church's move might feel like someone turning down the volume on your favorite scary movie. If you prefer a more guarded line between God, angels, and humans, Augustine and Aquinas will sound like they are protecting something important. Either way, it shows you the real way the Nephilim got tamed. Not by bulldozers over buried skeletons, by arguments, by choices about which books were scripture and which were not, by careful definitions of what angels can and cannot be. And this is where the story touches us, because that pattern is not unique to the Nephilim. Anytime there is a short, strange passage that could explode into wild myth, the church has a decision to make. Do you let the imagination run, or do you fence it in with doctrine and say, "This far, no further"? Nephilim Talk today sits right in that tension. On one side you have channels, authors and forums that want the giants to stay wild. They want Nephilim to be proof of angelic bloodlines, secret bones, government cover-ups, and all the rest. Mystery is the whole point. On the other side, you have official teaching that keeps saying, "No, this is about human sin and divine judgment. Angels are not demigods. Giants are not another race. Do not build your faith around that." Both claim they are taking the Bible seriously. They are just choosing different guides for what those 4 verses are allowed to mean. So the next time someone tells you, "The church tried to erase the Nephilim," you can answer with a stranger truth. The church didn't erase them. It argued them into a different shape. It took a story that sat on the edge of myth and pulled it back toward a story about us, about what happens when whole cultures treat violence as normal, power as the only law, and desire as enough reason for anything. And that leaves you with a simple, uncomfortable question. When you hear those 4 verses in Genesis, who do you let shape what they mean? Bishops? Ancient myths? Modern channels? Some mix of all 3? Tell me in the comments which version you first heard growing up. Nephilim as literal monsters, or Nephilim as terrifying but fully human? I'm curious which giant story met you first, because how we interpret the Nephilim tells us a lot about how we interpret ourselves. Or maybe every giant story starts with how we read one strange sentence.